Hungarian diet, or diétás Hungarian. My name is Sándor Vésik, and this is the first time we do it in English. And hello, Beni. As a first, or Beni. So, for unhanded range source. Beni.
Really laggy.
Oh yes. Okay.
Can you
hear me now? Okay. We're live, so no swearing and stuff. Yeah, thanks to the I don't know, it's 4IG or DigiZRT, which have my home internet. I had to switch to my mobile because my home net is so slow that so at least we have some audience now, I guess. So again, hi everyone. This is the Muse on a Hungarian diet, Diétás Magyar Múzsa podcast. This is the first time we do this in English, and this is the first time I do this with Beni Novák. Hi, Beni. Beni is a journalist, former reporter of the New York Times, and an evil and deranged soul, according to Mr. Lentulai at the Hungarian government propaganda machine. So, hi, Beni. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been planning to do this for a while now, because we regularly talk shop about Hungarian politics on the phone with a lot of really dirty jokes going on. We'll leave those out today, but for some time we'll be thinking on do this publicly. So let's hope this will be as entertaining for others as it is for us. We have two topics for today. One is that Orban involves himself in the Romanian presidential elections, and the other one is that Orban decided to go full Vladimir Putin, and there is a foreign agent law in front of the Hungarian parliament right now. So this might be a great occasion to start our public chats. But before we do that, let's remind our viewers and listeners that I have a Patreon, and I also have an English language Substack, both of which will be linked down below once it goes up like a permanent video on the YouTube. I've not yet figured out how to do this in a live stream. So first things first, George Simeon and Romania, and how Orban ended up in a bromance with an open Hungarian hater politician from Romania. If I guess correctly, we wrote in our agenda that it's your ball now. So you have something about Orban's English, Tihany speech in English. You dug that up.
Yeah, so Orban he delivered some remarks in Tihany on May 10th, if I'm not mistaken, and as it relates to George Nikolai Simeon, this is what Orban said: "We share a historical destiny with the Romanians. We won't intervene in the ongoing Romanian presidential election campaign, but we send a message from here, in the middle of the Carpathian Basin. From this symbolic place, we assure the people of Romania and its future president that we stand on the ground of unity and cooperation. Therefore, We will not support any isolation or political retaliation against Romania and its leaders. Both the Romanians and the Hungarians are full citizens of the European Union, and it will stay that way. We must be able to count on each other in the fight for Christianity and sovereignty. So Simeon, like Orban, is a Christian leader who shares a historical, destiny with Hungary. So why are the Transylvanian Magyars so upset about Orban, lavishing praise on this great Christian Democrat? Tell me about this guy, Sanyi. Yeah, what do we need to know?
One of the reasons is like he is Christian, like Orban is Christian, but yeah. So we're talking about the guy who was one of the organizers of desecrating a Hungarian cemetery in Uzvölgy in Transylvania. This is a very symbolic Hungarian landmark. And a couple of years ago, Romanian like Iron Guard people, we'll talk about that later, went there with Romanian flags and desecrated the cemetery. He was constantly badgering Hungarians over using Hungarian symbols. He's opposing Hungarian language rights in Romania. He makes vague statements about expanding the Great Romania all the way into like half of the current day Hungary. He's a fan of the old Iron Guard, which was a paramilitary fascist organization between the two world wars in Romania. So he's like a general bad guy, not for just the Hungarians in Romania. He's a neo-Nazi. And in Romania and in Hungary as well, there is a certain level of tolerated anti-Romanian or anti-Hungarian sentiment, which a nationalist politician can use. But this guy is clearly beyond that line. So,
but Sanyi Aur, in my reading, has essentially made sport of inflaming these anti-Hungarian sentiments in Romania. What could possibly drive Orban to throw the Transylvanian Hungarians under the bus like this?
Basically, he misread the situation in the Romanian elections because originally he supported another guy called Crin Antonescu, who is also a nationalist, like right-wing Romanian politician, but not as a bad case as the Simeon guy. But Simeon collected on like 40% of the vote in the first round, and to basically everyone's surprise, the second guy in the first round was not Antonescu, but a very liberal politician from Bucharest, Nicu Orban. And Orban found himself in a situation where, if he endorsed Nicu Orban, he would endorse someone who is like openly liberal and stands against everything Orban stands for. So I think he tried to find a balance between like very carefully endorsing or try to not endorse Simeon, but he did a really bad job about it, and it was followed by a public outrage in the Hungarian community in Romania. Like all the Hungarian churches, which usually praise Orban in the church, all Hungarian politicians who are like on the ledger of Orban's Fidesz party, they all like opposed what Orban said and protested it. And
so do you think this is an unforced error from Orban? Is that your?
Yeah, I mean, Orban in the past, like maybe 1 year or maybe more than 1 year, he regularly misreads international politics, and this was one of the cases when he did that, and he was not prepared to this situation where he has to endorse someone who is like the complete political opposite of him. He didn't want to do that, but this meant that he couldn't avoid endorsing someone who is like an openly neo-Nazi, anti-Hungarian criminal, basically.
I mean, probably on a regional level, I think, Orban would, be open to having enjoying the protection or friendship of somebody like Simeon in the EU. I mean, we saw this right with Janez Janša in Slovenia. We see this with Fico in Slovakia and Babiš in the Czech Republic. That Orban, is looking for regional allies, and also with peace in Poland before they were ousted from government. Do you think there's any play like that going on in the background?
Yeah, the thought is there, but the Romanian politics and the Slovakian as well is special because if for any nationalist politician in Romania or in Slovakia things go south, the first thing they do is they say something anti-Hungarian because they can always play for anti-Hungarian sentiments. Not the whole country, but a lot of voters and their voters. Even if Orban thinks that George Simeon would be useful for him in the EU, this is not Babiš, this is not Janša, this is
way
not
more
even
extreme.
Fico. This is way more extreme, and we are talking about a guy who wears like traditional Romanian clothing and cultivates the memory of the Iron Guard, which killed Hungarians. So we can't expect this guy not to do the anti-Hungarian thing whenever he needs to. I mean,
yeah. Sorry for interrupting. I think maybe in the future you can do a show on the Muja that kind of situates this kind of national minority conflict in a historical context. Yes, but we would waste way too much time right now doing that. So let's move on. Yeah. I want you to. So look, what was it? 2004 was the Népszavazás for
the referendum. Yeah,
the referendum for the Hungarians, which was a huge symbolic issue for Orban. It pretty much guaranteed him the vote of the ethnic Hungarians in the near abroad, and that was kind of like this nationalist moral high ground that Fidesz was able to occupy on the political right for many years.
Absolutely.
Now it seems to me, I mean, one read of this might be that he just completely, this is like a weird reversal of it. It's very hard to make sense of what Orban just did in that context. So Magyar Péter has stepped in and has, seized the opportunity here to kind of retake this symbolic issue. Can you tell me something about that?
Oh, yeah. Péter Magyar is the guy. Obviously, we are talking about the most popular Hungarian opposition politician, and his chief innovation is that he is not trying to overtake Orban from the left, but he tries to push Orban and his party out from the center-right position what they occupy, and this means that he had to retake the use of national symbols. For the last 20 years in Hungary, waving the Hungarian flag, wearing the Hungarian coat of arms or the national colors meant that was a political message that you are like a right-wing nationalist guy. So it's like different, like in the US or in France, anyone can wear the national colors. It was not the case in Hungary. Now, Magyar appeared as like a national politician using the tricolor in every event, and this is a big move for him. He's now walking to Oradea or Nagyvárad. This is the first major city in Romania over the Hungarian border. There's a big Hungarian minority there, and he's walking there. And this is not very widely discussed in the Hungarian press, but it's a big and symbolic thing what he's doing right now, because first it has like very very strong religious symbolism. He shows it's like El Camino. He shows determination. He shows humility. All kinds of like really like sincerity, and the Romanian, like the Hungarians in Romania, will see this, that this guy is not doing this for short-term political profit, but he's doing the walk itself shows that he means business when he's doing this. And when he will arrive there, he will make a speech there after the Romanian presidential election, which is, I think, in the front of the interest in all of the governments around Hungary, because Orban either confronted leaders in neighboring countries or tried to
Ukraine.
Like the Ukraine, like sometimes Croatia and Slovenia, or if they are like the same like authoritarian pro-Putin guy, he tries to make friends with them. So it's a very like power centered politics what he does, and not along the national interest of the Hungarians over there and over here. And everyone is interested if Péter Magyar's strong nationalist symbolism and right-wing symbolism means that he will continue what Orban does, or in that speech he will talk about something more constructive. So that's a big thing, and I think Orban scrambles to do basically anything to cover that up, and I think that will lead us to our next topic.
And before we move there, for those in the chat, I just put up a link to the egymilliólépés.hu where you can follow, I guess, in real time the progress Magyar Péter is making as he hoofs it across Hungary toward Nagyvárad. And I think one more interesting dimension to add to that is, we are, less than a year away from an election right now. And so by making his way across Hungary, like this on foot, Magyar Péter is doing something. This is also an opportunity for voter outreach, essentially, to show his face in communities perhaps that haven't seen a Hungarian politician in years.
Yeah,
which I think is a really novel approach.
Yeah, it's like AOC walking to rural Iowa. So yeah, it's a big deal on that side too.
Yeah, so we will monitor this. I guess when do you think he arrives?
I have no idea.
Not before the Romanian presidential elections.
We should have checked that.
So, that's on Sunday. I mean, right now he's at, according to egymilliólépés, he's at 26.3. I don't know. Let's see here.
Is it a live map?
Yeah, it appears to be, yeah. So I guess he's like just a little bit over halfway between Budapest and Szolnok.
That's far away.
I mean, that's far. It's a long walk.
He should take the train. I mean, it's sometimes slower than walk, but
All right, let's move on to. So this is a big thing. Obviously, we should all be watching this. I think it's like fascinating to see how erratic Fidesz has become over this, and to see. I've been following these RMDS politicians on Facebook and kind of seeing, their anti-Simeon campaign, just the comments that are going there. Even, Magyar Péter has been chiming in too on like Kelemen Hunor's page, which has been very interesting. I wonder whether this will lead to a long-term kind of recalibration of the RMDS-Fidesz relationship after this.
That's an interesting question, because RMDS receives a hell of a lot of money from Fidesz, so it's not so easy to say no to Fidesz.
Oh boy, that sounds like foreign funding. That sounds like a segue to our next topic.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to topic number 2. Hungarians and seasoned Hungary watchers outside of Hungary know that there has been a pretty consistent grinding effort by the Orban government to kind of squeeze out freedom of expression and pluralism that doesn't quite align with their kind of master frame of the universe and Orban's place in it. And this is really intensified over the last couple of years, especially since the last election. Many of you might recall that on March 15th, during the national holiday speech Orban made, he talked, he referred to his critics as bugs, which in Hungarian, historical political context, never a good sign to do that. No. And he was talking about a big, what was it? A húsvéti nagy takarítás or tavaszi nagy takarítás or something, a big spring cleaning. He's going to get all of these people out. And so everybody in Hungary was waiting for this law where like Orban is going to do something. He's going to do something wild, but it never came. It never came until earlier this week. And then they dropped this like atomic bomb of just this wild law. Now, I want to help people kind of situate this in, where Orban is speaking from, like emotionally. And the reference point for me wasn't the March 15th speech, but at his évértékelő speech a couple weeks before in kind of late February-ish, where it's like the Hungarian or Orban's equivalent of the State of the Union address. So he was banging on there about, U.S. Ambassador Pressman leaving Hungary, and now has come the time to sweep, to do something nuts. And here's a quote from his speech. "We should not have to watch idly as they buy up their mercenaries before our eyes." Here he's referring to his critics.
Mm-hmm.
"Flaunting their impunity, citing and trusting in their international protections." And then he quotes something here. He says, "Miklos tolerated it. He tolerated it as long as he could tolerate it." End quote. That Orban was quoting. It goes on to say, "We have had enough. The American ambassador is gone. The international protection is over. The bell has rung. Let there be a new law modeled after the American Magnitsky Act. Let us close the money taps of the Soros network. Let the state agencies fulfill their obligation to protect sovereignty, and let us enforce the law with the perpetrators." Now, the quote Orban makes, the quote that he's quoting is a line from Arany János's Toldi Miklós, epic poem trilogy. And the scene that he's describing here is when like Toldi Miklós is like sitting around and these people are pestering him. And, he's like sitting there patient, kind of ignoring it. And at some point, when it gets too over the top, Toldi Miklós's emotions erupt. And he loses all self-control in this awesome display of power. And he like chucks a giant millstone at those mocking him. And it's this really gory spectacle of like crushed flesh and blood. And this is what Orban uses to describe like a motivation during his motivation for whatever's coming during his State of the Nation address back in February. To me, I see paranoia, anger, it's erratic, and then nothing happens for months. And then out of nowhere, the great Hungarian legal scholar, Halász János, submits this bill.
Oh, yeah.
So, Sanyi, can you tell me, first, tell me a bit about like Halász János and your kind of initial read of the bill.
Yeah, first of all, I think you should pitch Hungarian literature to Hollywood, because
I should.
That explanation about Toldi was like, I want to see like a 6 year, like 6 season.
Yeah, but that might be a foreign influence, in America if I do that.
Okay, so János Halász is a nobody. I mean, he's a member of parliament with Orban's Fidesz party, a total backbencher. Zero political significance in Hungary. The reason why he submitted this draft legislation to the parliament is that there is a loophole in the Hungarian rules of how legislation should be submitted. So if the government submits it or a political party submits it, there's a lengthy procedure like committees and whatnot, which takes weeks and months to happen. But if it's an individual member of parliament who requests it to be dealt with like with urgency, then he can do that. So if they want to do something overnight, they usually hand it to one of their backbenchers. They submit it, and they can even have a vote on the following morning. When we saw that it was posted by János Halász, for those who follow Hungarian legislation, it meant that it could be like enacted as soon as today.
I think one other point that's like really important to include here is by essentially delegating this to Halász János, the government like wipes its hands, I think, or appears to wipe its hands in a PR sense of, oh yeah, this wasn't us. Like it wasn't the government that came up with this. This was, Halász János on his own.
Yeah, and this is also this is all like a lot of things about this new legislation is it like screams Orban, and it's a very common and often used tactics by Orban that he tries to he just throws a stone in the water and watches what happens. And
in English, we say you throw shit at the wall to see what sticks. That's how we describe that.
I will call my English teacher after this that she should have taught me this. But so yeah. So Orban often tries this, that he starts like here and tries to gauge the public reaction, which is an outrage now in Hungary. So this new law, you told about Orban's intention to do something like this in February, but my general opinion about this new law is that this was written in haste. There were so many vague details in that which suggest that possibly someone got the order to draft this like 5 days ago or 3 days ago, but it's still a scary concept, this new law. Basically, it says that any Hungarian company or organizations or legal entities receiving any form of foreign material support, whether it's donation, a salary, gift, or even sales revenue, can be subject of this new law if they try to influence public debate or outcome of the elections.
Like you right now. That's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing, Shani.
Talking about like high English, do you know what I give about this? What I do not give about this?
What?
Flying fuck.
Oh, fighting words. Better watch out. Lancy's going to come after you.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. So if any Hungarian legal entity or association wants to influence the Hungarian elections, and if they do with this in the specific subject matters of, and I quote, independence, democracy, Hungarian minorities, sexual rights, peace and security, Hungarian identity, and Christian culture. So, funnily enough, you can influence.
So if you pretty much talk about anything,
yeah, but
that Fidesz is polling on, or that doesn't align with, just what's the preamble of the Alaptörvény? So you pretty much can't talk about stuff that Fidesz wants to talk about.
Yeah, I mean
it's like
no, it's more specific than that, because for some time we have been waiting for the main themes of the campaign for the general elections next year. But this is the first like vague outline what Fidesz wants to talk about, and these are the specific areas where they want to silence everyone. But still, you are right. These are very broad and vague definitions, and I could talk for hours about the procedures outlined in this new legislation, but it comes down to a very simple thing. This is completely arbitrary. So the government puts you on a list of forbidden organizations. You are not exactly forbidden, but you can't receive money. You can't do a bunch of things, and everyone is watching you.
Who in the government puts you on the list?
We don't know. So it's a government decree. So a government decree is made by the cabinet meeting and signed by the prime minister. So so it means that you just find yourself in a decree, which like a piece of legislation. You don't know the grounds why you are there. You don't know which activity triggered that, and you don't know anything. And because this is not an administrative decision or a judgment by a court, you can't challenge it.
So what does this mean in a practical sense? I mean, I think quite rightly, a bunch of media organizations in Hungary and NGOs are speaking out and being very vocal about how this is an awful thing, and a newer milestone in Orban's kind of squeezing out of any kind of independence or critical voices in the public space. But in a practical sense, what does this mean for an organization? So,
a couple of things. First, that banks are involved in this legislation. So, if an organization finds themselves on a list, it means that all their bank accounts are flagged, and the banks handling those accounts have to stop every transaction coming from abroad, or or if it's a domestic transaction, the organization has to make a statement that it's not like a covered foreign transaction. And
how do you do that? How do you do that? How do I prove? How do we prove that?
So let's suppose it's your money to me, then I have to obtain a statement from you
that we're not violating the sovereignty.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So cool. Imagine someone having like 500 Patreon supporters, like 100 of them being like double citizens, and that's another innovation here, that the term foreigner is defined that in a way that even Hungarians who have another citizenship besides the Hungarian one are foreigners. Now, how the hell should I know that my Patreon supporters or Substack subscribers, by the way, send money via Patreon?
Well, I'll tell you how, Shani. You go to the, when somebody wants to donate, you arrange for a meeting with the Kuzyedzer.
I should find a way to turn this thing. This guy haven't called me in like 5 years, and this is my first live stream, and he does. No. Anyway. So where are we?
Yeah, I was just saying if a dual national or anybody wants to donate to you, it's probably advisable that you guys have like a Kuzyedzer on staff at the Muja, who
a Hungarian notary,
Hungarian,
not just any American. So if you want to send me $5, I will buy a ticket for a Hungarian notary to fly to DC, get it notarized, fly back. Yeah, it definitely works like that. Yeah.
So essentially, we're talking about something here where it's like the administrative hurdles to like actually implementing the rules that are now is like it's crazy. It's beyond it's impossible.
Yeah, and it's a compliance nightmare. So it's a nightmare for the organizations on the list. But there is like pages and pages about what the tax authority should do about this, and pages about what the banks should do about this. Now, I'm quite sure that no one from the tax authority or from the bank association have seen this, because if they did, that they should have told Orban that this is impossible, what you want. But it's also a compliance nightmare on the donation side, because those international, like the major sources of money, like George Soros Open Society Foundation and organizations like that, they don't really send money into shaky legal situations, and this is what it creates: a shaky legal situations where no one knows what's going to happen. And but on the end of the day, if you are like a repeated offender, your company or your organization gets struck from the register, and you are done. So it's a big Damocles sword over all the government critical civil organization scene, the free press in Hungary. So we don't know exactly where this new legislation will strike, but everyone feels themselves in danger.
So journalists who want to protect sources risk having these really intrusive search measures implemented against them by the authorities in Hungary, as do organizations who provide legal counsel for people involved in serious litigation against the state, perhaps like human rights organizations. I mean, this is a really gnarly bill. And I mean, to me, one of the things that was clear, I don't know if you saw this piece on where was it? It was on Atlatso.
Yeah, the one written by I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't something that extends just to civil society and journalists. I mean, you're talking about for-profit businesses now that, at the behest of the government, will have their banks monitoring transactions to make sure they are in compliance with
the new law, which has a definition under which everything falls. I mean, someone called me jokingly yesterday that if, like, the government, the Magyar Nemzet, the government newspaper, is circulated in Transylvania. So if they sell a copy in, I don't know, Temesvár or Marosvásárhely or Oradea, where Magyar is walking right now, if they sell a copy of Magyar Nemzet in those cities to a double citizen, and everyone there is a double citizen, then the Hungarian government newspaper will fall under the scope of this new law.
Yeah, and there are also transparency requirements here on the leaders of organizations affected by this. So, asset declarations, which is, it's really strange. And then Zsolt here on the live stream, shout out to Zsolt, is talking about the fines. Yeah, if you are not compliant with the regulations, 25 times the original sum. Yeah, that's in the law too. And I saw something about the that any of the assets or money that are seized as part of this go into the Nemzeti Együttműködés. Shut up.
Yeah, it's basically.
Oh, that's cool.
That's Orban's pocket, and then.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talk about this here, and I'm going to kind of step out on a limb, Shani, and I'm going to say something controversial. I want to test your mind and your reaction to this. So we talk here about, obviously, this is like crazy for journalists and for NGOs operating in Hungary. We talked here about how private enterprise, just businesses who may be involved in anything that the government does not look favorably upon, would be affected by this. But one thing that hasn't been talked about, I haven't seen, at least publicly, is what does this mean for the parties? What does this mean for Tisopárt? How, if you could use your legal mind here to kind of look at the series of this string of legislation that's come out since the Sovereignty Protection Act in 2023 that prohibited foreign funding to Hungarian political parties, and you see this like gradual building up here, do you think a situation could arise where Fidesz would, or the government, or the Suverenitátsvédelmi Hivatal would use this law to train its sight on TISA specifically? TISA doesn't get any public funding for the party right now, right? So it stands to reason that their only source of funding is donations from Hungarian citizens and from the sales of merch, from the sale of merchandise. And until this bill, being a dual national, having two passports, a Hungarian passport and another one, wasn't a crime, essentially.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong. But here, if a Hungarian citizen who holds the citizenship of another country, Romania or wherever, was to buy a hat, make a donation or something to TISA, does that open TISA up to?
Oh, absolutely. If someone just buys a coffee for Péter Magyar in Oradea a week from now, it means that, the guy buying the coffee was a citizen of Hungary and Romania. Coffee cost like, I don't know, €2, and that's foreign funding under this new law. Or, which is, I think, more interesting because it shows a couple of aspects that might hurt the Hungarian government, that Magyar's party, the TISA party, is now a member of the European People's Party. This is the same party group, which the German governing party, the Christlich-Demokratische Union, the CDU, is part of. And CDU has a foundation, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is like an official German, like government-funded organization, and they are big friends of, or were big friends of Orban before the split between Fidesz and the European People's Party. But I think it's completely reasonable to think that that they will give some kind of support to Tisza party during the election campaign. Maybe even just some guy,
doing an event together.
Yeah, an event or anything. That's also like forbidden funding under this new law. Now, I don't know whether whether Fidesz want to go like in a direct confrontation with CDU. But there's another aspect here, the EU, because there is a lot of things going on about how do you define a foreigner, if it's a Hungarian citizen, a Hungarian citizen with another citizenship, and so on. But we are talking about EU citizens. I mean, obviously not the Ukrainian double citizens or the US-Hungarian double citizens, but most of these people are citizens of Hungary and another EU member country. And now, under EU law, you cannot limit the flow of capital, services, and so on. The liberties within the four liberties within the EU. So if any kind of legislation comes out which says that we will limit these on political grounds, the EU Commission will strike within minutes. Or within
I mean, one of the things that kind of caught my eye thinking about this is if Tisza, all right, so the propaganda situation in Hungary right now, like according to the Kormánysajtó and everybody on the government side, Tisza is in cahoots with Brussels and Manfred Weber, and like apparently is like involved in this like spy scandal with Ukraine. I mean, they're really leaning into this idea here that Tisza embodies everything that is like anti-sovereign Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
So they are kind of creating the pretext for a kind of like hostile treatment should a very intense law like this be adopted. And in that case, would the bank accounts that Tisza has in Hungary automatically be monitored?
Yeah.
For contributions? I mean, this is a really interesting situation. I mean, have you heard any talk about how this law will affect Hungarian political parties?
No one knows. And in the live chat, someone also pointed out, and this is a very good point, that all the leaders of the organizations on this new list will be labeled as prominent public figures, which has a bunch of like financial and reporting things, but the other thing is that under Hungarian law, you can say anything about a prominent public figure. So it opens up for the Hungarian government propaganda to say anything, and you can't even sue them because you're a prominent public figure and you have to put up with anything they talk about you.
This is a really good point, and I think it's an excellent segue to kind of the role of the Szuverenitásvédelmi Hivatal. So I guess in layman's terms, the Sovereignty Protection Office is this kind of newly created, but like a year and a half ago or something, a year and a half ago created agency. It's like the Hungarian government's doxing agency.
Mm-hmm.
They can go after people. One of their first reports they did was this like elemzés, this analysis of like Twitter. And they named me, like my name came up in there a bunch of times as being part of this like grand conspiracy to like undermine Hungary with my articles.
Yeah, you
like
are.
That for them was evidence of like yeah. So I mean, it's this really wild idea, and so I guess what happens here is I guess one of the things that can happen here is that people or organizations who fall under the scope of this new law can pretty much expect at this point that Lancy Tamash is going to dox them publicly.
Absolutely.
Go after them in ways if they are seen as, influencing public debate in a way that is
forbidden.
Very, very strange. So I think one of the things we will see here, I mean, if I had to place my bets, I would say that Lancy Tomash and the Superenitas Vidami Hivatal are going to have this kind of elevated role now in the next, until the next election. I think we're probably going to see a lot more activity from them. I've seen some reports, although I haven't read into them deeply, that Lancy is saying, or people in the Fidesz orbit are saying, that this law is modeled after FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act of the United States, which is complete horseshit. This is not true at all. This is a weird something else. This is a very different thing here. Yeah. What does this bill tell you, Shani, about how far Orban has gone so far and is willing to go in kind of silencing his critics and bullying everyone into fear?
I think the main point here is that I don't know and no one knows. I mean, this gives him the opportunity to do basically anything, but he is in this position he has been in this position for the last 15 years, and this is it's more like a pressure. So it's not a direct threat. It's more like a pressure. And one reason for that is that you don't know when Orban will strike. And also you don't know how exactly the procedure will look like. Because I'm sure that the guys at the tax authority, they don't know how to conduct an inspection on forbidden influencing of public debate. The banks don't know. The banks are waiting for a government decree with the exact rules of how to monitor the accounts of these organizations. So yeah, no one knows how this will exactly work, but everyone can fear it. So it's more like putting pressure on people. But I think the next logical question would be: Is this a gumicsont? So how let's explain for the American or Chinese or North Korean viewers of this show that what's a gumicsont?
Gumicsont is a Hungarian expression used to describe an effort to create an issue or a scandal or a news item that distracts from something else that's happening. One of a prominent podcast host in the United States and professor at NYU has used the term the phrase weapon of mass distraction to describe what Trump does here in the U.S. And gumicsont is essentially the same thing.
It's a chewing toy.
It's a chew toy, like you would give to a dog to have the dog preoccupied. I very much don't like the use of that term. We spoke about this briefly yesterday, but I have this conundrum where Fidesz uses this a lot strategically. They use it a lot. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, they will use this to bait a certain segment of society into a certain kind of behavior that they can then train their cameras on. I think one case here is what they did with this pride ban. I think they wanted to get Magyar Péter to take a stand on it, and that to come out and protest with Hadhazi on the bridge or whatever, and then they could tell their voters and the Hungarian public that Magyar Péter, blah 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 blah. But when we talk about it as a gumicsont, we walk into this trap of really minimalizing the serious impact of what they just did. So the pride ban is effectively it penalizes freedom of expression. This, and that's a serious issue. It's not just about pride. And this law here is another one that's like, okay, for a gumicsont, it's a pretty gnarly gumicsont.
yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think if Orban could, if it is, if the Rogan and Novák came up with this Gumichont, which I disagree with you. I don't think it was like written in 3 days. I think they've probably been working on this because it seems to kind of layer on top of other pieces of legislation that we've seen. But just hear me out. Just hear me out. Just hear me out, Sean. You just hear me out. Let a man talk. Let a man talk. Why now? Why at this moment? Why this week did they decide to do it?
I don't know. A possible reason is that for weeks now, a couple of weeks, at least a couple of weeks now, they have lost the control on the narrative. I mean, this is one of these.
I would say for like the last more than a year.
Yeah, but it's getting worse for them. With this blunder with the Romanian election, with the Ukrainian Spygate, which is just too long to discuss here, there were a series of events in the Hungarian politics which caused Orban to not dictate the public debate about things, but follow public debate about things. And one of the things that Orban did the best in Hungarian politics for the last 15 years, because of he has like unlimited money and resources, is to control the public debate. He always sets the pace. He always sets the topic of the public debate, so everyone else is following him. And that thing has turned. No, he is following on often just things, but it's getting like a pattern here that he has to follow what Peter Magyar says, and that's something
he's reacting now. He's reacting.
Yeah. And when I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about live stream. I was thinking about a good simile here, but probably the Battle of the Bulge movie, the Halál 50 órája in Hungarian. So this is something like the Ardennes offensive of the Germans in the Second World War. That was the last major effort to overturn the tide of war on the Western Front. They concentrated all their assets to make like one big last attack to do something about what's going on, and this is something. I mean, we are a year before the next general elections. In the previous elections, by this time, we have always known what the topic of the campaign will be, what kind of money will be sent out to the voters to buy their votes, what kind of legislation will be introduced to scramble the coordination on the opposition side. We have always knew that before the like a year before the general election. Right now, we don't do that. Right now, there is chaos, and I think this is an attempt to regain the upper hand in Hungarian politics. He tries to draw out all opposition parties and opposition intellectuals to make a stand on in front of the parliament in Budapest, and then the big protest while Peter Magyar is away, so these parties and politicians and intellectuals will bash Magyar Péter for being not in Budapest when there is problem here. So this is an attempt to regain control, and I'm
sorry for interrupting.
One of the elements of why this is introduced now. I'm not saying that this is the only reason, but this is one of the main reasons.
Yeah, if I may, I'm looking over the comments here, the chat on the stream, and I kind of agree with what Jörg writes here, that this starts as Magyar Péter begins his his journey, the El Camino journey to Nagyvárad. To me personally, I think that is one of the most profound kind of symbolic protests that I have seen in Hungary in a long time. Like, yeah, I don't recall that ever. If I was a reporter now in Hungary, I would be following that, and I think Orban doesn't want that to be talked about.
Yeah,
I mean, they dread that situation. I mean, Magyar Péter has essentially reclaimed an incredibly or appropriated an incredibly symbolic national issue for many Hungarians, not just on the right, but I think by and large, many Hungarians are like, yeah, it's probably not cool to have Romanian Nazis run amok in Transylvania. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal. Okay, so I guess if I can say anything about the Gumichunt aspect of it, one of the really cool things that I witnessed in Hungary over the years as a reporter that I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that is how, we saw in Hungary the takeover and shutting down of media organizations that were critical to Orban, everything from like Origo Index, Figyelő, the list goes on. And in the wake of that destruction, you saw new media organizations rise up with the people that used to work at that. In some cases, we see media organizations rise up from people who didn't have a background in traditional journalism, so to speak, partisan as one example. And I think the kind of opposition and independent, podcasting ecosystem is super robust also. And this is an area that Fidesz hasn't been able to tap into. Like, they don't have the kind of reach that these guys have. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. The Magyar Péter interview on Partizan had like 2.5 million views in a country of like 9 million. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And they have filled this void, and it's not a void on the left. I mean, I think it would be very hard to call Magyar Hang or Válasz Online a leftist outfits. But they are doing tremendous reporting. They're doing long form kind of podcasts and audio stuff that people are able to engage with. And Fidesz hasn't been able to drown out that space. And I worry that with this legislation, that's exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, but definitely that's one of the objectives here. But you are talking about micro businesses. So if someone wants to put something on a like a small company, you can set up a small company in Hungary like in 2 days. You can set up a Slovakian company in just 2 days. There are Hungarian lawyers over the border in Slovakia specializing in setting up Slovakian companies for Hungarian companies for tax reasons. And I'm not saying that it makes life easy. No, it makes life hard, and it makes this whole thing personal. But I mean personal for us podcasters and bloggers and YouTubers and whatnot. But to crush this scene is not going to be easy because this scene is also very flexible. I mean, right now we are talking on a US run platform which streams this thing to 2 other US run platforms, and your Gurlo Dollárok arrives me through Chinese channels. Yeah, so
Churan Cseppen.
And the other thing is that one of the reasons why Fidesz couldn't tap into this big void you were talking about is because you can't buy cool. Yeah, we are cool. At least I am. Being not just like an opposition YouTuber or podcaster, but a prosecuted opposition, it gives you so much greed in this scene that you are on the list. I mean, it makes life hard, but it gives you like a huge stamp that this guy is genuine because Orban is after him.
It's really weird. This is like a really perverse and kind of extreme egyházügyi törvény also. You kind of like think about that. So that you have your kind of preferred churches, and those, same thing with Ivan. You remember they lost the 1% thing, and it took like years of litigation to get that back. Where I disagree with you is I think like financially, one of the trends we saw, Partizan does the 1% thing. They've earned a bunch of money. I think Telex, this is the first year they'll be able to do this also. So it's not as though these administrative, this death by 1,000 cuts. It's not like one cut doesn't have any kind of impact. I mean, it could have a tremendous impact.
But I was talking about the small guys. I mean, Partizan is a big guy now, and TEDx is one of the biggest like online.
I think also Valas Online has a foundation too.
Yeah, and it takes 2 years to earn that status when you can receive the 1%. We have not talked about the 1%. So any Hungarian citizen can direct 1% of their income tax towards any organization which is eligible for that. And in order to be eligible for those 1%, you have to be on the market for 2 years and submit a bunch of documents and stuff. So yeah, withdrawing that status, yeah, that's like a death warrant for many of these, or if not a death warrant. That it's a big blow anyway.
Well, it's hard to imagine how the EU would be okay with this. I mean, if it gets
no way
voted on. But let me ask you. I mean, we're a bit over time. We said we would do 45 minutes, but while I've got you here, are you worried about this? So can you tell me anything about your audience? Do you have foreign donors? And if so, what do you do in exchange for their donations?
You went back to the US a year ago, a year and a half?
Yeah, a while back, yeah.
Was it a year and a half?
No, it wasn't. It was like less than a year.
Less than a year, and you already forgot that Hungarians don't talk about money.
Oh, that's right.
It's so US to think about your income and your no. Even without this legislation, we don't discuss that.
Do you think your subscribers? Do you think you have, or do you know whether you have subscribers who are outside of Hungary?
Oh, absolutely, there are. I mean, in the comment section, they regularly say that, "Hey, I'm reading this from Ireland, from I don't know."
Are they paid subscriptions?
Some of them.
Are you worried that this will, how this will affect you? You don't seem particularly concerned about.
If it happens, I don't receive the 1%. The worst thing that can happen, I set up a Slovakian company, and Orban can kiss my ass.
Well, there you heard it. I think we can close on that note. Shani the Rebel. Well, thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot for having me on your on the Muja. And I guess if there are English language listeners here, I'm going to link in. I've been throwing links into the chat here, but there is the Helsinki Committee put out an English language translation of the bill we were just talking about. I put the link there in the chat for people who want to look at it, and maybe you can link Tibor's piece from Atlatso in there too.
I think
kind of curate some reading material.
Yeah, I
about
will.
this.
And the recording of this live stream will go on my English Substack page, so definitely follow that because the links will be also there. So it's the Muse on a Hungarian Diet. That's a Substack blog. And thank you for being here in the show. And for all my viewers, look for the Patreon button and the Substack. And thank you for listening us. Bye.
Adios.